Welcome back to Project Zomboid. Today we're going to be expanding on my previous series, playing something similar but with quite a few differences, which you'll come to notice soon. The first thing you're probably going to notice is that the zombies look different. I actually spent a little bit of time trying to make a texture pack with some kind of alternate looking faces this time instead of just shadows. Unlike my previous run, I actually get a really bad spawn this time. I have nothing more than this little tiny house and it had pretty much nothing in it. At least I got lucky with this alternate having an axe on their back. I decided that for starters I should check out my neighbors' houses. After all, this is a map that I've never played on and I don't know what could spawn here. This time, unlike the previous series, the alternates are starting out at full strength, having toughness set to tough and their strength set to superhuman. Additionally, I'm using a mod that pretty much disables any food from spawning in that isn't from these weird events. So in this case, pretty much no house is going to have food unless I can find something like this, a bowl of soup on a counter. In this wardrobe, I find a fanny pack. Even though it's usually not that good in regular Zomboid, since I'm using the inventory Tetris mod, it actually becomes extremely important to have this, because now I can barely carry anything without a bag. After a little more searching, I find myself a gun case. This is also useful as I can carry more things in it and because it has a gun. This time around, I am playing with a realistic version of the advanced trajectory mod, which means I won't have perfect aim like my previous character did, but at least it's easier to aim at them. I decided to make a quick run back to my base so that I can drop off items. There's a very low chance I'll actually end up staying here as it's pretty hard to defend this area and there's really nothing of value here. I quickly decided that I should put all this soup in the freezer. After all, that's pretty much the only place where it's going to last me. For now, the only food I have are these 3 bowls of soup in my freezer, which isn't great, so I decided to check out my other neighbor's house. Maybe they have some kind of food. Immediately I'm met by 2 alternates. I was trying to consider whether or not it was worth it to go fight them. I couldn't see any other ones lurking around, so I figured if I just play this very carefully, I could maybe take them on. I decided my best bet was to try and approach really slowly and see if I could just aggro one. If I could take them on one-on-one, it would be, of course, much easier than fighting both at the same time. This did not work though. After some absolutely miraculous dodging, I somehow managed to get one down. As you can see, they're pretty tough this time around. I quickly entered the house just to see what was up. I quickly realized that this was actually a great base spot, complete with a fireplace and everything. Because of inventory Tetris, it's particularly hard to carry furniture around as they require large bags just to take them. So it was going to be much easier to bring back the little loot I found here than to bring the important things from here back to my tiny base. decided I would quickly check the house across the street. This was the exact moment I remembered that the alternates don't stumble over fences. I then quickly went inside the house, and of course, shut pretty much all the curtains. Then I mentioned that the alternates also have their sight set to max. Pretty much they can see me from a mile away. This house actually ended up having some of the first non-perishable food items I found this run, including cereal, some canned food, and some chips and beer. It's not the best food, but I'll take it, honestly. For some reason, I still came back to this house to drop off my items. I was still considering whether or not I wanted to move out into the bigger house, but eventually I decided that I would. At this point, I also found a guitar case which I used as my bag for the time being. Here you can see me starting to put away the items from the old house into what is going to be my new house. I also didn't realize that I could just pick up the television using my primary hand or secondary hand and just bring it inside like that, so I kind of left it there for the time being. On day 2, I woke up and immediately got to work looking around. At this point, I had a couple of specific goals I wanted to achieve. Primarily, I needed to find myself a backpack, and ideally I would find myself some seeds, as I can already see that living off canned food isn't going to be an option this time around. Additionally, I needed carpentry material, not only so that I could reinforce some windows, but this house already had a window that was broken. They really wanted to patch that up as soon as possible. I decided to start off by checking out whatever houses were to my right. Since at this point I'm pretty much just looking for any and all food I can find, checking every house is worth it. In this house I find a skill book for first aid, which is going to be useful. Not only because my character has the slow learner trait, but also because I've got the Health Plus mod installed. That makes the first aid system a lot more important. While here, I also decided to take some curtains. These will be useful as a large portion of my house is just glass walls. Ideally, I'd be able to either break them down and replace them with wooden walls, or at least reinforce them later on. But for the time being, I just need to block line of sight, as the alternates can really see well. Heading outside, I noticed that the house to the right of this one actually had a car parked in front. The chances of it having a key are low, but if I can get a car working, it might be useful. At some point, I also picked up the keys to this house, as I can lock the doors for some reason. At this point, my food stock was finally starting to look a little bit better. Now that I had at least an entire tub of soup and a couple of bowls, I figured it was time to start looking for some other things, primarily weapons and carpentry material. This time, the alternate's intelligence is set to random. So even though most of them can't open doors, some of them still can, and it's worth it to at least lock my doors before I leave. Checking the car, just as I expected, I didn't find the keys in it. Kind of unfortunate, but for the time being I wasn't going to use it anyways. I have no idea just how many alternates are around here, and I don't know how many would be attracted by the car. This house actually had a garage. It didn't have the most useful loot, but at least I found 5 nails. So if I got some planks, I could at least board up the broken window. As per usual, the kitchen really didn't have any food, but at least it had a cleaver, which I can not only use as a weapon, but also as an axe to chop down wood. What I didn't realize was that this house was actually probably going to save me. Out the back, there actually seemed to be some kind of farm. Not only were there some potatoes outside, which last very long, but inside this little locked greenhouse, there were some tomatoes. These tomatoes are important though because they're seed bearing, meaning that theoretically I could get infinite food if I managed to harvest these. The potatoes weren't seeding yet, so I decided to leave most of them behind. I'd come back later. After reaching the weight limit on my guitar bag, I decided to run home so that I could put these in the freezer immediately. I can't cook them into anything nice and they're not a good source of calories, but at least for now they'll keep me going. Somehow, just by doing this, I actually gained a level in farming. At this point, it had started to rain quite heavily. This, mixed with the fact that there's a slight constant fog, makes it really hard to see when I'm outside. So I've got to be very careful looking around. Unfortunately for me, I still had things to do. So despite it being hard to see outside, I decided to go anyways. I passed by this sort of play park of sorts where an alternate was kindly waiting for me. Being this zoomed out, mixed with all the weather effects, and finally the filters on top from reshade makes it really hard to see them. At least for now, there's very few of them. I had seen on my map that this house actually had some kind of shack next to it, and I was right. The shack itself seemed to have a couple of cardboard boxes, which is pretty interesting. And inside there was some pretty useful loot. Immediately I found a ton of spray cans. I don't know how useful these will be, but they're pretty cool for just marking things around my base, so I decided to take some. There were also quite a few weapons, or tools, that I could use as weapons. More importantly, there was a saw which I really needed to start working on defending myself. Since I was going to be mainly growing crops for this series as my food source, I decided to try and take one of these fertilizer bags. I had to do some inventory Tetris just to find space for it, but eventually decided that I could leave behind a rake, as I wasn't really going to use it as a weapon. After making it safely back to my base, I decided to start putting away items. I designated a specific part of this container here to be just for farming equipment. Now that I had a saw and some nails, I could work on reinforcing that broken window. I decided to put a plank on either side of the window. I couldn't place any more as I didn't have enough nails, but for the time being they shouldn't be able to enter. While I still had enough potatoes and tomatoes to last me for quite a while, I decided to start digging out a sort of garden in my backyard. I figured my best option here would be to try and create a little garden here and then build a wall around it. After all, there's quite a lot of walls here I can use. I just have to hope the alternates stay this passive the entire time. As of right now, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, so for the time being I decided to read up on some skill books. Now that I didn't really need to worry about food for the near future, I decided to start taking some curtains. Considering the alternates have the best eyesight possible, it's not a great idea to have an entire room made of glass. While looting another house for more sheets, I actually found something even better: a duffel bag. Even though I now had a duffel bag with which I could carry a lot of items, I didn't leave behind my guitar bag. With inventory Tetris, it's a lot more important to just have a lot of containers with a lot of space. The actual weight value isn't really that important now. As I entered this house for more sheets and hopefully some decent loot, I actually ended up finding something great. There was another duffel bag here which I could carry on my offhand instead of the guitar bag. Now I could actually start moving around quite a lot of items. Inside the house's garage there were some brand new tools that I could use as weapons, as well as some carpentry material, which was pretty useful. At this point, things are starting to look much better. I know I'm not secure whatsoever, but at least for now I have food, some pretty decent defense, and quite a lot of entertainment. At the end of the day, this is some pretty good progress to make on the first episode. And considering what I've set up, I'm probably going to need more than this to survive. But for now at least, I should be fine. I managed to finish putting all the curtains on my glass room, and I can actually use this for something. Probably only for storage, but at least now they can't see me while I'm in there.
Hello. I'm not quite sure we've met before. But that shouldn't stop me from telling you this. They won't be this calm forever. They know where you are now. And they will find you soon.